time, space, and method in every industry. 3 things. Changes the time zone you do things in, the physical space you need to be in, and the methodology to create value. That's what digital really is all about. And so I think, generally speaking, sir, the world would be with you. We're in a crossover period, old to new game. That most companies would say, we're working really hard, even forget my other points about who does the innovation. But the agenda would be heavily loaded on box 1 with a wee bit of box 2. Would that be fair? And the crazy thing is, in this period of transition, although they're all market value boosting, the world desperately needs 2, 3, and 4, but most agendas are in 1. And partly, again, going back to Gordon's first point, we lack a methodology of how do you do 2, 3, and 4. Just shouting, let's be innovative, doesn't solve for the what do I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock when I come into work. And you can see it being played out in industry after industry. A bit of statistics. The pharmaceutical industry is often, when I give my test to audiences, what industry, is often voted as very innovative. Because people make the second mistake. They confuse R&D with innovation. It's confusing input with outputs. Look at the money we're spending with severely qualified scientists and top PhDs. And the pharmaceutical industry does not lack brain power, that's for sure. In the last 10 years, aggregated, if you take the R&D budgets, the search for new generic drugs, from the big pharmaceutical players globally, Pfizer, Merck, AstraZeneca, GlaxoSmithKline, Novartis, Roche, and so on. They are now spending, if you track the line, using 100 as our base point for about 10, 12 years ago, the budget's gone up by over 200%. They've over twice as much money to play with. And yet, the production of new molecules that get all the way to a new blockbuster drug has come down by 50%. That is not sustainable in today's world. But 3 generations of brilliant leaders in these companies, that's the only game they know in town. That's what they've been brought up to do. They wait until people get a disease and then they produce a drug to try to cure it. I do a little bit of work with my friends in Pfizer, I have to admit an interest. When I was doing this kind of session with their executive committee, one guy was getting frustrated and he said, well, Gordon, what do you think is going to happen to healthcare? Ever heard that? He got aggressive with me. What do you think is going to happen to healthcare? I said, I have no clue. But the last thing you guys need is an outbreak of health. Can we start with that? If the world ever gets healthy, you've got no business franchise left. Bless you, you've heavily invested in illness cure, which we'll see is a game changer in a moment. And if you looked at the areas of potential innovation, ladies and gentlemen, in healthcare, the parts of the jigsaw puzzle, there's 1 million of them here. You could take this home and do an exercise, put in my 4 boxes where each of those fall. They're the things that are changing global healthcare. And you will find exactly what our colleague said, is that over 2/3 of these things occur in boxes 3 and 4. But the pharmaceutical industry is investing a huge amount of money trying to get more efficient in producing drugs that still fit the blockbuster category. And I think it's one that we use a lot in 6CAP, that we're using with our friends in UGM in our joint venture studies, is again we're seeing the need for new game thinking of innovation is coming because just like happened under Steve Jobs, the forces of convergence are colliding markets that used to be different. Yes, we've got the pharmaceutical industry still in the top left, but then we've now got the inroads of top right. It didn't even happen 12 years ago. It was impossible to decode the gene sequence. If you could do it, it would cost you $10 million and it would be inaccurate at the 90% level. Companies like 23andMe now do your DNA analytics for $100, a spit. Link you with other groups who are like you. Talk about your disease possibility. Don't say you will get it, but they begin to open up what you might look like in a future state, allow you to do something about it. Human longevity, started by a friend of mine called Craig Venter, V-E-N-T-E-R, invented a company called Cellular Genomics. And they were the first company in the world to decode the sequence of the 3.2 billion letters that make up what it means to be a human being. And then bottom left, we've now got the arrival of the big data firms, the Googles, the IBM Watson healthcare. And I think in my lifetime, I'd love to hear my good friend Ab's view on this, Dr. Kaba. I think we're going to move from talking of big data to big insights. A lot of companies have got big data. The question is, how do you mine the data for the insight? The valuable thing is, what does it tell you didn't know before? And at the bottom right, we've now got the growth of new forms of diagnostic technologies. So all of these are coming together. We would be arrogant to say, from this country, in its joint venture with SixCap in Singapore, a little business which has already started, and you'll hear about it in these 2 days, called BioPay, that comes from our portal. I may as well talk to you about it. Has a chance of doing an Apple for the industry, because it is a box 4 player that tries to bring together these 4 huge forces. And I think the new game of healthcare is the shift to the 3 Ps. In our lifetime, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing it moving from curing to preventing, from reacting to predictive, and from mass to personalized. That requires different innovation to cutting drug discovery time from 12 years to 11. Let's see if you look 1 or 2 conclusions. Some of the best CEOs in the world are getting caught up in this maelstrom. Through no fault of their own, they're doing an outstanding job in box 1. But the newcomers are in 2, 3, and 4. If you want to know something about the theory of disruption, disruption happens in different boxes. Most disruptors come at you in boxes 3 and 4. A bit of 2. Incumbents typically are protecting 1. And these are outstanding chief executives. Moya Green, Canadian citizen, came across to the Royal Mail in the United Kingdom. A dying industry worldwide. It may be different in Indonesia, I don't know. It would be no one's example of a frontier digital company. And yet it's dealing with some of the most human things you can do, which is messaging from me to you. Almost all of it being disintermediated by the internet. And what Moya is trying to do is persuade the government to give them more money in order to get better at delivery times. You know what I mean? So they'll now say 92% of letters in the UK due for delivery tomorrow are delivered by 11 a.m. And that's called innovation. I say, you know what, Moya? I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm in the working class. I go to work every day. Many people don't, but for the workers here, it may be, notice the difference in terminology. It may be delivered at 11, but it's not accessible till 7 o'clock at night. It's not when you physically dump it, it's when can people read it. It's lost business over 15 years to internet-enabled systems. And yet they're becoming more and more like the DHLs over time. Jeff Bewkes, we'll have to see, personal friend, great business person, used to run HBO in America. And now, of course, we've got the Time Warner, AT&T get together. Can they really get to box 3 and 4? Why did they not invent Hula? Why did they not invent TiVo? Why did Kodak not create Instagram? Who knew more about photography when we do a SWOT analysis? Photography in the new game versus the old game. And another guy, I actually ran an away day. Have you heard of the away day, by the way? The offsite. Do any of you have an offsite? It just takes 1 day. And that's the day we think strategically. Are you okay with that? I say, what the hell do you do the other 364? I say, well, we execute. I say, right. In today's world? And Hans Vestberg, outstanding chief executive with Ericsson, was just fired. No company has done more research on innovation on the future network society than Ericsson. And yet it's a dying brand. You may remember they had a joint venture with Sony. Do you remember that? On phones, Sony Ericsson, gone. 40% of the telephonic traffic, either fixed line or mobile in the world, goes through an Ericsson box. Did you know that? But their brand equity is 0. Because they're too proud to say, like Intel, Ericsson inside. You've no clue what's inside. It could be an elastic band in there as far as you know. They don't capture the market value of their innovations. So a few final comments. I think this is the way the world is going, ladies and gentlemen. The asset structure of most companies is shifting fundamentally. Like 6CAP, we're now learning this and preaching it every day. The world I grew up in as a business school professor was the left-hand side. The assets of a company, percentage of the output, were physical, tangible, and they led to some physical results in the marketplace. And of course, if you studied economics, it leads to diminishing returns. If you get ahead, people catch up with you. In today's world, the most important assets are intangible, and it's because the output of most companies who are really smart is informational, and the asset that drives it is intellectual. This is the world of increasing returns. You get ahead, you get an Apple, you get an Amazon, you get a Facebook. You might only have one or two players in the market. And these intangible assets include a lot of things. And shame, ladies and gentlemen, frankly, shame on the global accounting profession. We still have no way to measure this stuff, except saying we can't measure it. So let's call it intangible. I think you get away with that when it's only 10%. When it's 80%, that's a different question. And increasingly, the resources that produce breakthrough innovations come from brand equity that includes your reputation, includes your unique competencies, of which innovation will be one, the talent of leadership. My colleague Dave Ulrich, the most outstanding human resources professor in the world, has done some outstanding econometric work for the HR profession on the contribution of leadership talent to the market value of a corporation over time. We've kind of suspected it, but we never sort of knew. And this idea I've been pushing, our innovation capabilities, not our technical knowledge. These things are now accounting for the major differences in corporate valuation. So penultimate conclusion would be this. What have we talked about this morning to open the curtain on your 2 days? Some caveats, okay? The caveats, the warning signals are innovation is not the sole property any longer of a few technically qualified and authorized individuals. It used to be. It is no longer. It is not R&D. You don't measure output by looking at spending. It is certainly one that requires the broad participation right across the executive population. It is not preponderously the technical or the engineering group that does it. It goes way beyond creativity. So next time, if you want to do an off-site workshop on 6 hats and so on, ever done that stuff? You're playing creativity. That's not innovation. Creativity and innovation are two entirely different things, very different disciplines. And then finally, innovation can build this huge intangible asset value. If I'd asked you, let me go back to the beginning, the top companies by market valuation in the world, what would they be? By market value, that's the number of shares times the price on a given day. Any idea? Top 3 or 4, Apple's number 1, Google number 2, Alphabet's really. 3, Microsoft. 4, Amazon, now. Facebook, Alibaba. They are not known for their physical assets. And you know what I think, ladies and gentlemen, to go back to my opening theme, why cannot Indonesia produce one of these companies? It's only people. It's only innovation. There's no physical in it. They've created an enormous pool of wealth in the world by their capacity to think about innovation in a different way. And shame on my continent, Europe. Shame on Brussels for deciding to incriminate and pursue in the law courts these 5 companies, using 1950s economics on monopolies. When the real question should be, why has Europe not produced one of these things? Why are the top 6 companies in Europe added together by market value not even close to Facebook as one company? It's just a few kids. Instagram was 13 kids, been going together for 15 months, who sell a Facebook concept for $1 billion to Mark Zuckerberg. The only thing that can stop us, actually, is the thing that can help us, and that's our brains. So improving innovation has got nothing to do with technical processes. It's escaping from what, as you remember last year, many of you, what I call the dominant logic of a corporation. Those deeply, deeply embedded brain cells, that capture our view of the world, who we are, how we create value, how we're getting ahead. And often we don't even see them. They're the unconscious collective programming of the human brain. Innovation debate should start with a debate on the dominant logic of a corporation. And they're the things that take us out. They cause paralysis of the brain. A year ago, I remember finishing, and I want to repeat it because it's still the most important thing of all. There's one thing I've not mentioned. So in thanking you again for coming, for your tremendously courteous reception, for the enthusiasm I see for the ideas, and even for innovation that takes place as I speak with dating agencies. For all of these things, could I wish you the one most important contribution to innovation success of all? Could I wish you good luck? It really is a very important intangible asset. By the way, this is my corny way of asking you to buy my new book. Are you okay? It had to come. I've got it all right. I've got the title. There is no content, but most management books are devoid of content anyway, so it doesn't matter. Need a good title, a Carol title. I'm going to call it The 7 Habits of Highly Lucky Innovative Companies. You like it? You do need a bit of fortune. There's an old Scottish proverb, and I wish you it for the second time, with more meaning this time. An old Scottish proverb that says, yes, fortune's important, but fortune favors the brave. With your help, this is time to build a brave Indonesia, and I look forward to being part of that movement. Thank you. Thank you.